Hello, it's Kate Pullinger here. Hello to everyone at the Ottawa Chapters book club. It's great that you're reading The Mistress of Nothing. That's really good news, and I hope that you enjoy it. The novel took me a long time to write, nearly a dozen years. I started it in the middle of the 1990s after I read Catherine Frank's wonderful biography of Lucy Duff Gordon. And in the biography of Lucy Duff Gordon, the story of Sally and Omar and Abdullah is just a tiny fragment in Lucy's extremely interesting and varied life. But the idea of Sally giving birth on the Nile on Christmas Eve, having hidden the pregnancy from Lucy, really gripped my imagination, and although I found it a tremendously difficult book to write, I kept returning to it because of my interest in that moment on the Nile. I abandoned it a couple of times and indeed wrote other books. I wrote my novel Weird Sister and also A Little Stranger during that period. I think the reason I found it so difficult to write was because it was just an area of history, Victorian servants, Egypt in the 1860s, Egyptian culture, the Arabic language, Islam, just all these areas that I knew a little bit about, but certainly not enough to presume to write a novel. So I just did a tremendous amount of research, and it also took me a really long time to find the right voice for the novel. As odd as that sounds now, because clearly the novel needed to be told from Sally's point of view, but it took me a long time to figure that out. I'm going to just look quickly at the questions that Gary Drake sent to me. I can see them here on my screen. So it's really interesting that somebody in the first question is, I recently read Where Does Kissing End? And I wondered about the similarities of strong heroines Lucy and Mina. It's really interesting to read a question about Where Does Kissing End, because I did an event on Saturday here in London, and at the end a reader came up to me and told me that she'd read Where Does Kissing End and how much that novel had meant to her, which is always, it's great to hear that. I mean, that book came out, I think it's 1992 or 93, a long time ago. So it's great to come across people who have read it and remember it. But I think strong heroines are a feature of most of my writing. Just an interest in women, an interest in writing about women and women's lives. I'm also very interested in men, of course, but it is true that a lot of the stories I write have strong women at their center. And that's certainly the case with The Mistress of Nothing, with its two clashing heroines. The second question is, I read that you took 7 years to write Mistress of Nothing. In this time, what kind of research did you embark on? Well, I think I've kind of answered that already. Just a huge amount. I even tried for a while, for 6 months I had Arabic lessons. I tried to learn Egyptian Arabic. It's a tremendously difficult language. I didn't make very good progress at all, but in fact I learned a lot from my tutor, who was a young Egyptian man. That was, in a way, the opportunity to talk to him about Egypt. Those lessons afforded was really a very valuable thing. Since the novel is based on a true story, what inspired you to take on such a massive research project? Again, it's the story of Sally giving birth on the Nile on Christmas Eve. That is the thing that stuck with me throughout all the research I did. And this is the first book that I've written that's based solely on a true story. An older novel of mine called The Last Time I Saw Jane also features James Douglas in it. James Douglas, who is known as one of the founding fathers of BC. There are chunks in that book that are about James Douglas and his half-Cree wife. So I'd had a bit of experience with writing a type of historical fiction based on a true story. But I'd certainly never embarked on an entire novel that was based on a true story. And that was an interesting experience. In a way, I could go on about that for quite a long time, but I don't want this video to be too long, or I'll never be able to send it to you. So that's a question that, if I ever do get to your book club, would afford further discussion. Why did Sally decide not to confide in Lady Duff Gordon about her pregnancy? Now that's a good question, and I felt in the writing of the novel that she would have, part of her would have wanted to tell Lucy, and another part of her was afraid to tell Lucy, and that part of her that was afraid really was the part that understood that Lucy would not take this news kindly. I think that no matter how much the relationships between master and servant had changed and been altered by their experiences in Luxor, at the end of the day, Sally was Lucy's servant. She was not her friend. She was not her equal. And for me, that was the reason behind Sally's deception. It was a fear, really a kind of fear of the truth. And indeed, once Lucy finds out, things do not go well, as you know. So we'll never know. I mean, Sally did not, that is part of the true story. Sally did not tell Lucy that she was pregnant. So my speculation about that is pure fiction, really, because there's no record of why Sally didn't tell Lucy. There's plenty. Lucy Duff Gordon wrote her own book, Letters from Egypt, which is a wonderful book about her time in Egypt, and a lot has been written about her experience and what her life was like. But there's no record of Sally beyond the few mentions in Lucy's letters. So we'll never know the real reason that Lucy didn't confide in Lucy Duff Gordon, but she didn't. And for me, that is, that's part of what drove me to write the story, was to explore what it would be like to hide that from someone you lived with in close proximity. A kind of foolish and at the same time brave thing to have done. Okay, so that's my answers to your questions. I hope that the book club meeting has gone well, and thanks again for your interest in my novel. All the best. Bye.